This is the To Be Single or Not to Be podcast, and we're doing what? Running it back.
Hi guys, and welcome back to the Shaanah Montanna YouTube channel, and we are here with another episode from the Running It Back series of the To Be Single or Not to Be podcast. So before we get into it, make sure that you like and subscribe on YouTube, and if you are listening, make sure you leave a review and a rating on your favorite podcast platform. But also make sure that you go and follow my new Shaanah Montanna journal collection on Instagram at SM Journal Collection, so you can catch up with all the latest and greatest ways to make sure that you get clarity around what it is that you say you desire in your life, and we can help you manifest it through the power of writing. So today we're going to get right to it, and we are talking about market value in 2023, and I'm really just going to kind of speak from the heart on this episode, because you all know that last year there was the viral moment that went around where the young lady was saying that she wouldn't date a man that was a bus driver unless he owned the bus. And then prior to that, we've had the era of RIP Kevin Samuels of high value men and women. Rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, but you can't rate yourself as more than a 6. And I just want to call out a few things when it comes to market value. I want to say this at the end of the day, and I feel like I had this same sentiment years ago when I first talked about this on the podcast, and I feel like it's just been amplified now. And so what I'll say is this: when it comes to market value, it is a two-way street in a sense that men are going to have an idea of what it is that they want in a woman physically. Women are going to have the same thing, because ultimately when you first see somebody physically, before you get to know them, that is the only way that you have to know if there is an attraction from you to the other person. So that is all you have to go off of. And I think that many times we tend to minimize that in a way to act as if that's a bad thing, because it's not. And we tend to act as if our physical appearance does not matter when it does. Now, I feel that when it comes to our value as a woman and in society, I'm going to speak from, I'll just say from a woman's perspective and being able to navigate what market value is like. Yes, you can meet somebody that may say physically, you know, they buy in what you selling. They like what they see. And I ain't talking about sex work, but they like what they see. You like in what you see. You know, so they like what they see. And so that's the initial attraction. But from there, I definitely feel like the market value for a woman is so much deeper. It shows, you know, when it's more than about when men always want to say, I want a woman to be my piece. And when we ask them, you know, what does that mean? It's more so like, I just want a woman to kind of like be seen and not heard. A woman to take care of the home, to cook, clean, I don't cook, I don't clean. Oh my God, I get so distracted. So almost like I want a woman to be seen and not heard. I want a woman to take care of the house. I want a woman to not be argumentative. I want all these things. Almost like I said, I want you to just let me cheat in peace. I'm going to take care of the household. I want you to let me cheat in peace. And I think that ultimately our value is definitely more than physical, but I think the first step is we have to acknowledge that that is what a man is going to lead with. And you have the responsibility that if a man leads with just wanting to get to know you off of the physical, which is fine, because as I said earlier, that's all that they have, it is up to you to be able to show that person beyond that what it is that you offer. And I'm not saying in like a Star Search kind of way, you got to get up and tap dance and show them what you got like a talent show. What I'm saying is that if you are taking the time to build the foundation, to communicate, to get to know this person so they can see that you are a loving person, a kind person, a gentle-hearted person, a hard-working person. You are an authentic person, a person that shows up in the world, that does their due diligence, that you go to work and you take care of what it is that you have to take care of. You take care of your family. You give back to the community. You give back to the world. You show up in this world and you take up positive space in a way where someone wants to be attached to that. And I think that as women, we have to be able to hold on to that and recognize that the physical part that people want to just hone in so much is really only one little bitty piece of the pie. And mind you, some people may say it's a larger piece of the pie, but when I say it's a little piece of the pie, I just mean that you can meet somebody that you think is attractive, and within 10 minutes of talking to them, you could be so turned off by this person that you never want to talk to them again. And I'm sure a lot of people have run into that. And I'm not just saying for superficial reasons, like you talk to them and they breath stink. I'm saying like literally in trying to get to know them, you can tell that they are an arrogant person, or they're not a good person, or they just don't communicate well, or they have nothing to say, or they literally are just going off of their looks, and their looks have been what has gotten them by in their entire life. But when you try to sit down and get to know them, there is nothing more there. So I think it's okay for us to recognize that when it comes to market value in regards to the physical, people tend to push back on that so much because, it's so much body shaming in the world. It's so many negative things said about women that some may deem to be overweight or don't fit the status quo of what beauty looks like in America. But I think it's up to us to just recognize that that is just the first step. That is what's gonna create the conversation. But it's up to you to be able to recognize that beyond that conversation, what is it that I do truly offer? And am I having a conversation and trying to get to know a person that is worth me showing all that I have to offer, you know? Because even if somebody feels like, you know, they buying what you selling, that don't mean that, you know, they are worth sticking around for the sale. So I think that's a huge part of it. And I think the other side is that when it comes to market value, it's also going to be different for everybody, because it depends on where you are in life, what you have going on, what your standards are, what your non-negotiables are, what your boundaries are, what your requirements are. It's a plethora of things that you have to be aware of when you're going into the relationship space. So when we talk about market value, to me, when I think about market value, it is going to be those things. You know, how stable are you mentally, emotionally? How stable are you financially? How grounded are you in common sense? How grounded are you in spirituality? Do you go to work every day? So it's a lot of layers that come to the conversation of market value that many times you don't hear people talk about, because when you think about the conversations I mentioned earlier where the person said, you know, I'm not going to date a man driving a bus unless he owns it. And you had a lot of people that came back and said, you know, well, my dad drove a bus and he's an upstanding citizen, or, you know, a bus driver makes X amount of money, I make X amount of money, and I do very well. And it's like people are throwing all these very surface level things on the table, because again, you can meet a man who owns the bus station, who owns Greyhound, who owns Southwest Airlines, that could treat you like shit. But it's up to you to be able to do the work to determine, who is this person innately? Who are they inside? Who are you literally? Before I can say how valuable you are to my market anyway. So I think that for a lot of this, people got to crop this idea out of their head that when it comes to women, the market value is just how big your ass is. And then when it comes to men, your market value is solely lies on how much money you make, because that's just not it. And I think when we have some of these superficial or clickbait conversations that you may see on social media, that is the part that is left out. So I think we have to be able to recognize that when you are dealing with somebody, yes, it does help if you are financially stable and me getting to know you, but that's one of the many pillars and layers that I'm pulling back to get to know you through many conversations, through many listening sessions, through many appearances in your life to see what you got going on, who you got going on, who you hanging with, who your mama, who this. I'm paying attention to a whole lot of things to really determine what's the value of your portfolio. Because you can't talk about what's the market value. You know, what's the value of this full portfolio? Because yes, again, the finances may be important, but you got to have, especially at 30, 35 plus, you got to have all the pieces of the pie. So I think women, I challenge you to think deeper and harder about that when you do want to lead when it comes to money, because that's another thing that we got to talk about when it comes to women is, you know, sometimes at some point in society, it seems that some women, not all, have gotten this idea that as soon as we meet a man, we deserve full access to all of his money. And that's kind of unhinged behavior. We're going to have an episode about that. But I think when it comes to that, yeah, say if you do meet a sucker who want to give you access to all his money, but he want to whoop your ass for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Or you meet somebody who want to give you all his money, but he want to control you in other ways. You can't hang out with your friends, can't go nowhere, can't do nothing. You know, it's a lot of other things that can come with that. And then on the flip side, for a man to say, I want a woman with a fat ass, like, you can have somebody with a fat ass, but what if she don't? You know, you not, she got, you want somebody that does work. She doesn't have work ethic. She doesn't take care of her children. She's somebody that, you know, just does not show up in society as a good person. We have to be able to go beyond just the items of market value, because when you think about it, you know, anything in this life, if you're going to talk about the value of a house, they don't just look at the house on the outside and say, okay, we're going to look at the house on the outside and say, this is how much it's going to be worth. Or look at a car and say, we're going to look at it on the outside and say, this is how much it's going to be worth. Or look at a piece of jewelry on the outside, look at the diamond on the outside and say, okay, this is how much it's going to be worth. No. When it comes to placing the value on something, you have to be able to look at the totality of the object. And that goes for people, places, and things. So when it comes to market value, we definitely have to crop that idea out of our heads that what society says is valuable is what's known to be true and valuable, or what men say is known to be true and valuable. But no, it's about valuable. It's about, no, what do I know to be true about myself that's valuable? And that is the selling point that I have without saying a thing when I show up in spaces. So it's not about me showing up on a date and I got to get a rundown of all the things that I got going on, because that's definitely not going to happen. But it's about me getting to know a person over a course of time, where I talked about earlier, the initial attraction might have just been physical because we both saw each other, we liked what we saw, and we made a decision that we want to try to get to know each other on a deeper level. And once we start to get to know each other, you are going to find out things about me that you're going to say are great, good, indifferent, however you want to feel about them. And you get an opportunity to determine what is my market value to you based on all these things you know about me, and vice versa. But if you are with somebody who's making the decision to determine what your market value is, i.e., rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, you can't choose a 7, or i.e., turn around, let me see that ass, what are we really doing? Because if I'm able to sit here and say, okay, I'm gonna rate myself on a scale of 1 to 10, I can't say a 7, I'm gonna say an 8, and you say, oh no, I think you a 6. Okay, now what? I'm a 6, and I'm still cute. Now what? You still don't know anything about me. You don't know what my morals are. You don't know if I have integrity. You don't know what my character is about. You know nothing about me. So there's no way in hell that you could have judged my full market value off that conversation. So that is what I challenge people to do. One, I would say on the other side of that, for women, when it comes to, as we talked about the physical and other things, if there's some part of your being that you feel like, when it comes to what makes you marketable or what makes you valuable beyond the physical, I'm talking about everything, you know, do you feel like you want to further your education? Do you feel like, personally, unattached to what any man or woman is saying, do you feel like you like the way that you look, or do you want to do something different about your look? Do you like the way you show up in the world mentally, or how you show up in the workspace? Do you like where you are in your spiritual life? Do you like where you are financially? Because the other side of that is, I always tell people, if you were to sit down and do your own self-evaluation and honestly evaluated your entire life, if you realize that you have more work to do than not, you probably don't need to be dating anyway, and you need to focus on what it is that you want to work on before you decide to try to sign up for a relationship. And men should take that advice too, but I talk to women primarily, so I'm saying it to y'all. But I think that ultimately, when it comes to things that we feel about ourselves, if we want to change something, if we want to do something different, if we want to do things that we feel are going to make us more valuable to ourselves, and in return, of course, it's going to make us more valuable to the world, because we're going to be able to show up as a more quality person in the world, then of course the effects are going to be long-term. Of course the effects are going to be great. Of course, every room that you step in, there's going to be this different aura about you where people do desire to be with you. But at the end of the day, your market value is not determined merely by what it is that you look like, despite what society may say. Your market value absolutely is not determined by how fat your ass is, how long your hair is, you know, how much money you do have in your bank account, because that's another thing, you know. We always say this, you could have, the times I've had, you know, plenty of money in my bank account and something happened to me where I was super sad. That money did nothing to make that sadness or that hurt or that pain go away. So I think we have to be able to step back. And if you are dealing with somebody, or somebody approaches you, or you find yourself in a situation where they want to make what you look like or your physical the end all be all, like that's all that's important to them, if you're okay with that, be okay with it and go forth and, you know, go forth inspired. But if you recognize that you are more than just a pretty face, or you are more than just a fat ass, or you are more than whatever the physical feature is that that person is pointing out, it's going to be up to you to make a decision to say, like, do I want to deal with this person? Do I want to date this person? Is this person for me? And I would hope not, because I think that when we show up in the world as our most authentic selves, and that's something that that is my hope for the world, that every woman is able to step in every room that she goes in as herself, as her beautiful self, as her loud self, as her outgoing self, as her outspoken self. You know, whatever that self may be, I want every woman to be able to step into every room authentically as herself. And if you're able to step in every room authentically as yourself, the value of every market is always going to be in your favor. And I think at that note, we signing off. Yours truly, Shaanah, Montana.